I am YumChunks. We are YumChunks. That was my Groot impression.
Sean, you asked for several seconds to come up with how you're going to introduce this, and that's what you.
No, those were the few seconds. We haven't started yet.
Oh, okay. All right. Come up with something else then.
Okay.
It's time to hammer.
Oh, I gotta really try hard.
Shut it down!
Somehow it's the best.
After the credits.
A YumChunks podcast.
YumChunks!
Because we're the freaking...
Okay, never mind. Let's just
Guardians of the YumChunks. It's not going to get better. They're just going to get worse the more opportunities you give me. So,
all right.
Welcome, listeners. This is After the Credits, a YumChunks podcast. And this is episode 118. We are talking about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. It's better late than never. But we're all here. I am your host, Sean. And with me, we're all back together. We've gathered our team. We're about to go fight the space bad guy. Because I got Ryan here with us.
I am here. I will join you in the fighting of the bad guys.
Sweet. And we couldn't do this without Chewie.
And I won't. You're going to have to.
Dang it. Well, we're doomed to fail. But that's all right. That hasn't stopped us before. But we're all here. It's been a long time. It hasn't been that long. But we've had breaks that have gone longer in our past. But it has been 6 weeks since our last episode. May was a busy month for all the YumChunks. I was on vacation for a couple weeks. I know Ryan was out of town for a couple weeks. Chewie, you had multiple projects that were taking up your time.
I was trying to get to through the end of the school year.
Oh, that's right. And you arrived,
which I just did because I just came from graduation. You
still have your cap and gown on as you're recording?
No, I actually could have been wearing one. Yeah, it's one of the you're required to work graduation and they assign you some type of duty to do at the thing unless you volunteer to be a row sitter, and then if you are, then you get to wear a cap and gown. I've never done that though. Maybe next year.
Yeah. Row sitter, like what? Keep the kids in line or something?
Yeah, they have teachers who sit at the ends of the rows, and they also march the kids on and off the field it's like a ceremonial thing. So
is it like it's like air marshals in civilian clothing on commuter jets?
Sort of, except for their robes are a different color. So it's not really incognito, but maybe this time next year when we're talking about whatever comes out this time next year, I'll be able to tell you that I just changed out of my cap and gown, but not this year. I was on balloon police duty.
Oh, in case people threw balloons, you had to hunt it down, pop it?
No.
Oh.
I had to tell people at the gate, you're not allowed to bring in your balloons. This is the second year in a row I've had to do that.
All their graduation balloons?
I have to take their balloons and go tie it up to a balloon jail post.
Oh, you should have just had a tack and popped it right there in front of their face.
Stared at them, just lock eyes with them, and look at them the whole time you're doing it as you're popping them.
The logic being that the balloons, because it's outside, they blow around and they knock into things, and then if you're sitting behind a balloon, then you can't see. So we don't allow balloons.
Oh.
Yes.
Well, I guess for the best. Well, congratulations, class of 2023.
You don't get any balloons.
No balloons for you. What a crop. You got a crop, this class of 2023.
I don't know what that means.
That's for the best. Anyway, well, let's get into some of what we've been up to in terms of the media we've consumed over the last couple of weeks. Yum, yum, yum. We've had plenty of opportunity, and lots of stuff has happened. In fact, so much stuff that I don't even think we're all going to get through all of it this episode. So we're going to have to store some chunks for future usage. Store some chunks for the winter, or the summer in this case, I guess. But yeah, let's start sharing. Chewie, why don't you start?
Okay. Today I'm going to talk about some of the TV I've been indulging in, particularly of the prank variety. I feel like we're in a bit of a, I don't know, a renaissance of prank media, given some of the stuff we've had recently. But there's 2 TV shows I watched recently. One of them was The Prank Panel. It's a reality / prank / game show, and it has Eric Andre, Gabri Sidibe, and Johnny Knoxville as a panel of prank experts and contestants. They come in and they pitch pranks to them. Like, if you guys have seen the Borat movies, and you guys have seen the what is it, Bad Trip? Have you guys seen the movie Bad Trip?
Yeah, I think I talked about it on the podcast.
With Eric
Yeah,
Andre?
yeah. So this show has a lot of the same behind the scenes people working on it. So the idea is, the contestants pitch their pranks, and if they like it, they go, okay, we're gonna execute this prank, and so then the show turns into all right, here's how we're going to set this up to prank this person, and we're setting up this, like, the first episode is like, we're setting up this fake wedding, and this is going to happen, and this is going to happen, and then you see it all play out. So, they aired the pilot, and you can watch it on, I don't know, one of the streaming things. But the show doesn't start for real until July. I don't know why just the pilot's available, but, yeah, I found it to be fun, if you like that kind of stuff. The other show that I watched, The Jury, this is kind of, and I can't remember, are you guys into Nathan Fielder's stuff?
Yeah. I've watched a fair amount of his, the show on Comedy Central, and I have seen all of the rehearsal.
Okay.
I think we even maybe brought it up.
I cannot. Ryan, have you seen the rehearsal?
Yeah, I didn't finish it yet, but yeah.
Oh, that show gets bonkers.
Well, you're describing,
So
I've heard of The Jury, but I have not seen it.
So yeah, this is an Amazon original, so the premise here is that it's a trial, and the way that the show is filmed and set up, it's like The Office, like a workplace mockumentary, but one of the jury members is being pranked because they don't know that the whole thing is a TV show. Like, they think it's a documentary that they're filming, or like a reality show or whatever it is, but he thinks that the court case is real and that everybody involved is actually real when everything is scripted, but it's not entirely scripted because, like, they don't know how he's going to behave. So it has big rehearsal vibes. So if you enjoyed the rehearsal, it's a little bit more of a straightforward version of the rehearsal, whereas if you've seen the rehearsal, you know that Nathan Fielder, being the crazy person that he is, like, it just goes into like 7 or 8 different levels of meta. This one pretty much stays on the same one plane of meta. So, it's pretty straightforward. Here's the premise, day to day for this trial, and, them trying to play out as if it's real. So, it's a little, conceptually, I think it's a little rough around the edges. It's a little weird because, like, it has talking head interviews like it is The Office from the fake characters. But, like, we know... Are they
in character, or are they talking as actors?
They're in character, talking to the camera, and we're seeing this. So, I'm not sure if we're meant to feel like it's switching back and forth between a piece of fiction and a piece of... Because we know that it's all, like... It's very... Tonally, it's weird. But... So some of it doesn't work for me, but the parts that work, I think, are worth the rest of it. And it's also not very long. I think it's like 6 or 8 episodes. So I recommend both of those. Jury is a bit of a softer recommend, but like I said, if you're into that kind of stuff, you might want to check those things out.
There was a show in the aughts, a reality show during the reality show craze of the early aughts, that reminds me of that I watched. I think, what was it called? Like Average Joe or something like that, where it sounds very much like the same premise, where it was a reality show competition, but it was like a standard, like, Big Brother style everyone's living in a house and they all get voted off. I don't know, whatever.
And one guy just
Some
keeps
stupid
going
thing.
up the zip line all day into the pool. He does nothing else but go
Yes.
off to the zip line and
You're
ravenously
just
eat
there
a
with
salad.
zip line.
Oh, okay.
Your face looks like a clock. No, the premise was that, well, yeah, it was the same premise. It was that they were all actors except for one guy. And I did watch the whole thing, but it was 20 years ago now, so I don't remember the details. But I remember, like, all the other characters were very played into the cliche stereotypes of, like, there's the good girl and the bad girl and the jock and the, I don't know, bad boy. I don't know. Everyone's either good or bad. But then there's just this schlub guy who's kind of in the middle of it all. But the talking heads part, they were actors. Like, it was like, oh, when we did this, I thought Billy was gonna freak out, but he actually was into it. Oh, I don't know. Like, it was so. It wasn't very, I guess, successful because I think they only had one season of it at the time. But in any case, it just reminds me of what this jury sounds like. Except this has more of a focus, I guess, because they're a jury, not just people.
The fact that it's a trial and there's different days of the case and then there's deliberation and all the stages of it. It gives it a natural structure for the show. But yeah, I'm on the wiki page for this TV show, Average Joe, that you're talking about, and it's conceptually similar. I haven't watched this, but
whatever. Don't go seeking it out. It's not worth watching. But it just reminded me of it.
Yeah,
but that's cool. Yeah, I'll have to check out the jury.
All right. Well, that's what I bring to the table, to the fire for this week. I'll pass the chunk and stick on to Ryan. Ryan, tell us of things.
Yeah, I have a couple games I want to share my thoughts on. First is the Mario Rabbids Sparks of Hope. I completed that game. Sean, you gave it to me for Christmas, and it took me half a year to beat it. Actually, I think I was playing it kind of off and on that whole time. Usually, like, I'll kind of focus on a game, but for whatever reason, it didn't hook me initially, and it didn't. It took almost the entire game before I was convinced that I liked it. So it kind of had like this ramp up at the end where all the things kind of were coming together more. So I still like the original more, but there is a lot of fun challenges at the end, kind of very just all the end game stuff. Where it's like, oh, okay, well, this should have been the whole game. Like, they should have been spreading this out more and had more, even further ramp up stuff at the end, and like, kind of like bonus challenges that they throw in it on games like this. Anywho, yeah, it was a lot of fun. I like it a lot. But yeah, 100%ed everything there. And the other game is also a Christmas gift from you. I just realized. Is the Last Clockwinder, which is a VR game. And I had not played VR for quite some time, but I kind of cleaned up my office space enough where I could actually get enough room and play. And yeah, so it's the game, to give a brief description, is the Last Clockwinder. No, well, I don't even like. It's pretty light on story, but basically what you're doing is there's a series of rooms, and in each room you have to complete a task. And the task requires a lot of coordination between a lot of different entities, we'll say. But you are only one person. So the way you're going to do this is by recording yourself performing one or two or three, but very small atomic tasks. And you're going to create a clone of yourself, which is a recording of yourself doing that task. And then you're going to interact with that clone of yourself that is repeating this infinite loop that you've made a recording of. And then you're going to make another recording and another. And so by the end of it, you have dozens, potentially, of clones of yourself interacting with each other to perform some task. And by the time you're done with it, you're just like so pumped, and like your head is like spinning with just the logic behind everything that's happening. And there, that sounds like kind of it is a puzzle game, as you may have inferred. And so that kind of sounds like it's going to hurt your brain, and it does in the way that a puzzle game should. But there's all these extra little things that come out of the game that aren't by design, but also is, because the recording of the movements is so literal that you'll kind of be watching your clones to make sure that they're doing what they ought to be doing, but you're watching yourself. Meaning, I'm watching myself scratch myself, because as I was performing the activity, I had an itch and I had to like scratch my chest or my back or my butt or whatever, and I'm watching this clone of myself do this thing. And so there's all these little moments like that the game captures that aren't exactly by design. It's just that's how the game needs to be the game that it is. And so there's all these extra little things that kind of come out that are so charming and wonderful. And one of the last things of the game is kind of like this little fun victory room. And you don't have to do this, but I just recorded like 24 of myself dancing. And then it's just so awesome when like you because you can kind of jump back and forth between the rooms. So when I re-enter that room, it's just like, oh, that's right, I have 24 of myself dancing right now. Okay, cool. So anyway, it's a really, really good game. Really, really fun.
Yeah, when I heard about that game last year, it sounded so like intriguing, and the premise was so like unique and singular that I was like, oh, I gotta get this for Ryan, and hopefully it's as cool as it sounds. So fun to hear that you kind of play through it. I'd love to check it out. And I wonder, is it on Quest, or do you have to have the heart like a Oculus?
It does. It's not that intensive, just in terms of scope. It is actually, the scope of the game is pretty small.
Yeah.
So I would be surprised if this couldn't run on the Quest.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I'll check it out at your place, and if it's, maybe check it out myself. But
yeah, for sure.
But that's cool. That's
yeah. I mean, boiled down, it is basically a study in industrial engineering, which I have some experience in. So I was kind of like, oh, I'm just going to throw all my knowledge of industrial engineering at this, and honestly, the game, I hope people like make their own levels in like the Steam Lab, or if that's a thing, because Matt, this is very much like Portal 2, like where you can, the possibilities are endless. Like you could just make these crazy contraptions and these rooms, these puzzle rooms. Anyway, because the game honestly ended too soon. I was like, oh, I need like 5 times more of this. Anyway, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Steam page right now. It looks right up my alley. Yeah, you remember you and I were both pretty into the level editor on Portal 2 back in the day.
Oh yeah.
I played hundreds of those user levels on the workshop, and yeah, that I would love to check this out and see. I love the style of it that I'm looking at. It looks pretty goofy, and
yeah, it's just goofy enough, I think, is like right where it needs to be.
Well, yeah, especially if it does. I would imagine most VR now does play straight on the Quest or Quest 2, and you still have the VR that you guys got it again, right, Chewy?
Yeah.
So you have one now?
I've barely been using it, but now that I'm on summer, I'm gonna probably prioritize getting Alex beat.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, prioritize Alex for sure, but if... this game, I remember looking at. I don't think it was terribly expensive and getting on sale or something, but yeah, definitely worth your time.
Oh, it's on sale right now for $16.
Well, I would say it's worth it. I would say it's worth, for sure.
Done.
Yeah, there's
bought it.
Well, friggin' sweet. Next time I see you, we'll talk about it, and yeah.
You get to compare your little dances.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Did you do all the balloon shop dances? Because that's the first thing I'm going to do.
Like I said, I did like 24 of myself, so each one is doing a different dance. I think I got them all in there.
All right. Okay, good. All right.
Anyway, those are my nice. Those are my chunks. Pass it on to you, Sean.
Cool. All right. Well, we got some TV, got some video games. I'll close it off with a couple movies that I've seen over the last couple weeks. Real briefly, like I mentioned, I was on vacation, so on the flights, I caught a couple films. I was finally able to catch Weird, and I was very happy I did. It was a delight. It was very fun. It was more like Walk Hard than I was expecting it to be, and I love Walk Hard, so that's a good thing. It's, not as, I guess, rated R as Walk Hard is, but it's very similar style of humor and just send up of the music biopic, and it's really funny. It's delightful. It's great. A lot of really fun scenes and sequences and just ridiculousness.
Oh, glad you liked it. Yeah, that was one of my favorites from last year.
Yeah, it was really good. Daniel Radcliffe's good, but everyone, and just like the scene where at the pool party, and it's just like all the like weirdo people.
Oh yeah, that's the best scene.
And like who is like is Jack Black plays? Who does he play? Who is he? It's Jack Black, right? Yeah, he comes in on him and challenges him. Oh, he plays Wolfman Jack. That's it. And then Conan O'Brien's in there. I don't know. It's just a hilarious scene. Anyways, so that was great. Another movie that I saw on a flight, which is called Moon Man. And this is a movie that came out last year and was recommended by a friend, actually a friend of the show, Sam, had recommended it. But I had not seen it. And when you're trapped on a flight, that's a great opportunity to watch films you maybe wouldn't otherwise. And I'm very glad I did, because Moon Man was awesome. I definitely recommend anyone go seek this out. I don't even know where it's streaming. Just book a flight somewhere and watch a movie, and that's how you can see this movie. It's a Chinese film, and it is about a man who, it's in the near future where there's astronauts on a moon base, and he's an astronaut on a moon base. And I kind of don't want to say too much more, because it's more fun if you don't, but it's also, it has a sensibility similar to Everything Everywhere All at Once. I don't want to blow it out of proportion and make people think certain things about it, but just a certain sentimentality to it similar to that. But it's great. It's really, really fun, funny, emotional. I don't know, just go watch it. Moon Man. And so those are my movie flight watches. Those are my vacation in an airplane watches.
So I just Googled Moon Man, and the movie's not the top result. A link from the Anti-Defamation League website. Moon Man is a meme derived from a character in 1980s McDonald's restaurant commercials that was appropriated by white supremacists, especially from the alt-right.
Oh no!
So it's
not that.
It's a picture of Mac Tonight photoshopped on the cover of the video game Doom. There's a whole rabbit hole here that I'm gonna just opt out of right now.
Yeah, maybe avoid that.
Search Moon Man film.
Yes, search Moon Man film. It's a again, I think it's either Chinese or Taiwan film.
It's Chinese.
So, yeah. Okay. Yes, and there should not be any confusion when you search. If you come across white supremacist stuff, you're on the wrong
if you see Mac Tonight,
yes,
go the other way. You're going down the wrong corner of the internet.
Yeah, I don't know where it's got to be streaming somewhere. So hopefully people could find it somewhere to watch. But then recently, in theaters, I watched a couple films. I saw the film Air, the biography or somewhat true story of how Air Jordans came to be, with Ben Affleck and Matt Damon and Jason Bateman, and it was really good. I generally like all those actors, and they're all really good in it. It's a peppy, fun script. It has a great soundtrack. It's full of nostalgic 80s stuff, Americana. It's quippy. It feels a little bit like an Aaron Sorkin. When you watch it, you could, I was like for a moment like, oh, did Aaron Sorkin write this? It has that kind of vibe to it. So all of that it's great. I really can't say, I can't complain too much, but I also can't really say I like it, because it deals in themes that on this podcast, on this very podcast, I have repeatedly said how much I am not a fan of, and that is this idea of these larger-than-life God-type characters and this film just plays into that modern American myth of someone who's just better than anyone else and deserves once in a generation, once in a lifetime kind of thing, and they deserve and are worthy of just billions of dollars and attention, and we need to worship this person and treat them like they're a god. Like it very much is that.
Yeah,
so,
you hate Michael Jordan. We get it. It doesn't mean I can't enjoy Space Jam. Okay, Sean? Just because you hate Space Jam doesn't
all
mean
I'm saying is that I'm saying it's a good movie. Not Space Jam. I'm saying it's Air. Air is a good movie by movie standards in terms of like, structure and the character and so all that stuff. Just, it's, conveying a message that I just, it's hard for me to get behind. But it's still very entertaining. So I would recommend it mostly. I would recommend a movie I don't like. I don't know if that makes any sense, but and then I saw which I don't know why we haven't done it. We should be doing an episode on this, guys, because I saw Fast X, the movie of a generation. Now this is a movie.
Is it?
I mean, I don't know. Actually, it's not. It's not a full movie. It's half a movie. It ends in the middle of the movie. Because they're doing that whole split the last part up into 2 films.
Oh.
So this movie doesn't even have it's just half a movie. It ends like in the middle of a
And Harry Potter sequence. Ruined movies. The proof is Fast X.
I don't think this is the first Fast and Furious movie to be indicative of that sentiment.
Well, I'm not saying that in terms of the quality. I'm just saying at least all the other films have ended. You know what I mean? Like at least they've reached a conclusion.
At least they ended. That's the best anyone could say about a Fast and the Furious movie.
Well, at least eventually it was over.
Yeah, but not with this one.
Yeah, we can't even claim that here, man.
And I mean, honestly, I've liked the last half of the second half of the Fast franchise in general. I like the direction shift in Fast 5, and it turned into this like spy superhero globe-trotting craziness. Right when they embraced that, I think I liked it. I will say the last 2, this one I think is. It feels the most stale. That formula feels like they're just like they're not. It's not that they're not trying, because they're obviously throwing a ton of money at this and production into this thing, but it just doesn't have some of the fun wow factors that some of the sequences in the previous entries have had. Also, I know these movies are not about plot or anything like that or story, but there's some, like, even that being said, there's sequences in this one that just boggle the mind with like, what was supposed to have happened? I'm not talking about the action scenes. I'm talking about the dialogue between 2 characters. And afterward, like, there's a scene where it's a talking scene. And there's 2 characters that are kind of always bickering. Ludacris and the other guy. If you guys, audience, listeners know who I'm talking about. Yeah. They're always kind of bickering. They're buddies, but they're at each other's throats a lot of the time. It kind of comes to a head with them, and they kind of get into an actual fight. And then in the middle of the fight, one of them just pulls dust out of his pocket. Like, it has not been set up. The dust is not anything. It's not later paid off in any way. Like, it's just like, and then he just throws dust in the air.
Uh-huh.
And this is in the same scene where Han, who is alive again, he came back last movie, but he's now alive. He eats a muffin laced with like LSD or something in it, and so there's a brief sequence where he's like tripping out, but he's not like he's not like driving. Oh no, I'm tripping out. It's like crazy hype, whatever. It's just him standing there, and they do like a camera effect for like a couple seconds. And that's it. Like what? You had someone eat a hallucinogenic in a crazy action driving movie, and what you do with it is you just have them stand in a room, and then it's gone, and nothing happens. Like, I don't know. There's like things like that in this movie where it's like stuff like that wasn't as common in the like Fast 5 and 6 and 7. I didn't feel, but maybe I don't know. I don't know. Anyways, it's a film in the biggest sense of the word and the lowest sense of the word. It's a film of contradictions. Yeah, I don't know. It's Fast X. Everyone knows what those movies are. They're crazy action films. Oh, what's his name? Jason Momoa is also a highlight. He's actually pretty fun in it. Anyways, those are my chunks. We get to the main course now, I think.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, spoilers for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. It's been out for over a month now. But for anyone who still hasn't watched it and cares, spoilers for the MCU and the other Guardians movies, blah, 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 blah. You get it. But, yeah. Ryan, I think you're telling us. Give us the rundown.
Let me tell you what happened. All right. Well, our Guardians, who, it's the whole team, are all living on Nowhere, which is that big skull thing from the first one and second one, I guess. They're all kind of just living there. They're all settled. Star-Lord is a little sad about Gamora, but everyone else is doing their thing, kind of okay. But they're attacked by Adam Warlock, who was kind of the ending of the second one that everyone forgot. And he's all gold. He's a gold boy. And he shows up and attacks them just because, and ends up injuring Rocket. They fight him off and he flees. So the story of this movie is now going to be to basically heal Rocket, because he's severely injured to a degree that they can't actually, they can't heal him without going on this big adventure. So the rest of the Guardians discover they need to go to this place where they have this kill switch, or this kill code, that will allow Rocket to be saved, because Rocket was genetically altered and whatever to be the way he is, and he's essentially the product of this guy called the High Evolutionary. So they go to his base called the Ergo Land. I don't know, it's something, but it's this big organism, and they get Gamora to help him out. And as she's from a different universe, so just keep that in mind. But anyway, they get into this place to get the kill code. They discover that the kill code is in another castle, and they have to go to where the High Evolutionary is, and he's on this place called Counter Earth, and they go there. Meanwhile, Rocket is, of course, on his deathbed, essentially, and throughout the whole movie, we're getting these flashbacks of how he, his backstory, and he was friends with, he was once a small raccoon, and he was a very cute baby raccoon, who made friends with other baby animals, and they're all being experimented on by the High Evolutionary to he's trying to create like this perfect life form thing. I don't know. Anyway, he's doing all kinds of experiments, and it's pretty graphic. Anywho, the conclusion of that story is that all the other animals are killed, but he escapes. All right, so that's his backstory. Back on Counter Earth, the Guardians are kind of talking to the folks that live there, who are like human animals. They're like human-sized animals. They're basically just humans with animal faces, and they don't speak English, so it's all funny.
It's BoJack Horseman land.
Yeah, that's basically what it is. Yeah. George Clooney lives there. Anyway, so they kind of split up. Star-Lord and Nebula. Yeah, they go to the High Evolutionary ship to confront him and do the thing. Meanwhile, Drax and Mantis stay back. So yeah, Star-Lord and Groot, that's right, confront High Evolutionary, and he kind of reveals his master plan, what he's trying to do, whatever. They get what they need to get from him and escape, but meanwhile, Drax and Mantis kind of defy the plan, and they end up in the High Evolutionary's ship. So they've kind of switched. So yeah, so now Star-Lord, Nebula, and Groot are able to get Rocket back to life, essentially. But Drax and Mantis are now trapped on the ship, which is flying away. Something happens here that I kind of lose track of, but somehow the High Evolutionary, he blows up the planet because he didn't like it anymore. They're all flying, and they all end up in nowhere, essentially. Or vice versa, I forget. Anyway, the nowhere and high evolutionary ship collide, or they are together, and the high evolutionary ship is getting defeated because of reasons. And so this is the climax of the film, and they have to get Mantis and Drax out, along with all the high evolutionaries' captured subjects that he's been doing experiments on. So there's a lot of action going on. Blah 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 blah. They rescue all the folks out of the high evolutionary ship onto nowhere. And through this process, and also there's fights going on in nowhere, fighting off the high evolutionaries' forces. So there's the other folks, like there's the James Gunn character and Cosmo fighting off the bad guys. So Cosmo is able to stop the bad guys from using their on reveal effects. That's great. And meanwhile, back on the high evolutionary ship, they get all the bad guys or the good guys out, and at the last minute, Star-Lord is he's gonna make his way back to nowhere where it's safe, but the ship's blowing up and he gets stranded in space, and then Adam Warlock comes out of nowhere and saves him, and they're all happy. That's pretty much the end. After everyone's done dancing, Peter Quill decides to leave the Guardians, and now Rocket's the captain. And yeah, Quill goes back to get back in touch with his Earth family. What else happens? Mantis also leaves. Gamora goes with the Ravagers. And then Nebula and Drax are they're gonna raise all the children they rescued. And then there's a post-credit scene that doesn't matter too much. But yep, that's the movie.
Yeah.
Yay!
Yay!
And it's been, and we all had to remember what happened in this movie.
Yeah, it's been a while. I kind of forgot how that climax came to be, but it doesn't matter. We got there, and it all worked out.
Yes, hopefully we could remember our opinions of this film.
Yeah, that was actually a challenge. I'm like, did I like this?
And some of our thoughts regarding it. I'll jump in real quick just to kind of maybe hopefully spark some things. Also because I saw it twice. So that I was thinking at the time, like, oh, good, this will like have me super fresh. But then when a month goes by, even seeing it twice,
I'm in the exact same boat.
Yeah.
My second viewing was probably a little more recent, but even then, I'm like,
Yeah, I was like, oh, it's been longer than I expected. I will say though that my first viewing was in Japan with Japanese subtitles, and I felt so cool.
Why?
What did the Japanese subtitles say when Peter Quill was shooting a three-pointer?
From downtown.
Oh, they actually did say that. Okay, interesting. They're familiar with that expression.
It did actually make the film, like, there was a cool element because the Japanese script is similar to the aesthetic look of, like, there's the language or the characters that, like, on the Guardian sign, right? So it made everything have a sci-fi aesthetic to the entire. I mean, obviously the whole thing is sci-fi. That's not a great way of putting it, but like it heightened that feel, I guess I should say, by having the Japanese subtitles the whole time. But that doesn't obviously affect the movie. My opinion is that I like this film. I liked it. I love it. I loved this movie. It was great. It was awesome. The Guardians has always been one of, if not my favorite, of like a single like franchise within the MCU, if that makes sense. And with the third one coming out now, I'm pretty confident saying that I think the Guardians franchise is my favorite. Like, there's all of the films in the franchise are great. Whereas, like, I love Cap 2, but I don't love Cap 1 as much. Cap 2 and, Cap 3 are good and great. Iron Man 1 and 3 are good, but Iron Man 2, you know what I mean? Where Thor, like, with Guardians of the Galaxy, I think they were all winners. So this was awesome. A lot of great character stuff, a really great conclusion to this franchise. I think it does a really good job of keeping it in line with Guardians 1 and 2 and, not becoming too big. I mean, thoughts are kind of all over the place, but I'll leave it at that for now. I loved it. I thought it was great. Super fun, funny, emotional, touching. Loved it.
Great.
Chewie, what'd you think?
My thoughts are all over the place on this one too, but not quite in the same way. I keep going back and forth on my opinion on this one. Because I when I think back on the movie and I remember it, there's stuff about it that I love. Like, it's some of the best stuff in any of these Marvel movies. And then other things I'm just kind of like, I don't know. Did this movie work for me? I'm not sure. I thought it was a little inconsistent in that regard. I mean, overall, I would probably agree with your sentiment that of the individual sub-series of the MCU, this is one of the better, if not the best one, the Guardians series, that is. But I think that still being said, I think this might have been the weakest one of the three for me. I think it's got really high highs and low lows, and I want to get more into that. But overall, really liked it a lot. But yeah, I definitely have some mixed thoughts on it. Ryan, what was your take?
Cool.
Yeah, I really liked it. I'm sad that you guys both saw it twice and I've only seen it once. I remember after seeing it the first time, I really wanted to see it again because I liked it so much, but I just never got around to it. So maybe that's an indication it didn't quite stick in my head as much as I thought it would. But having said that, I did really like it. I would say that I haven't seen the second Guardians in a while, but I remember not really liking it, and so I was happy that and just in terms of the MCU in general, this movie felt like a return to form as a high note as well, because I think there were a lot of high notes in the quote unquote earlier days of the Marvel films, as opposed to the last few years. Yeah, and I think there's a lot to like here. I think it was a little more mature in some senses, like in terms of filmmaking, and I think that kind of is more just looking at how James Gunn himself has kind of evolved as a filmmaker. I think he knew better when to pull punches and not, because I think it's the fault of, or credit goes to, the first Guardians, when Marvel took too many liberties with being like humorous and like rather than letting a serious note be a serious note, like, nope, we're going to end that with a joke to ruin the moment. But that's what Guardians kind of was. That was kind of the shtick. But then other Marvel movies said, "Oh, we can do that too." It's like, no, you can't, because you're not James Gunn. And I think this movie showed a lot of maturity in still being able to be funny in this much the same way, but know when it's appropriate to and not to. But anyway, this gets high marks from me.
Yeah, it's actually saying that the second one is probably your least favorite, because I think after seeing all of them multiple times, I think the second one's my favorite, actually. I think that one captures the... Yeah,
I like the whole villain ego thing does not work.
Oh, that totally worked for me. I think for Guardians, for me at least, it feels like the heart of the whole thing is like chosen family versus found family, and I think that movie addresses it the best out of the three. And yeah, I think that's why that one works for me so much. But yeah, I don't know. Where should we? Let's talk about this one. And where should we? Sean, where should we start?
Well, let's start with the beginning. And this is a very specific thing to bring up, but I thought the opening was awesome. This is maybe one of my favorite openings of any Marvel film. Maybe my favorite opening of any Marvel film. The music montage to Creep of Rocket just walking through nowhere, interacting with all the characters, and ending in the fight. Like, I love that sequence so much, and it immediately grabbed me. Like, it's like, oh, if this is the beginning, it's going to have to do a lot of work to make me dislike it, and obviously didn't do that work. It did good work to make me love it more.
I could not have more of an opposite reaction.
Oh, really? You hated that opening?
I was cringing so hard. I've never been more embarrassed to be a Radiohead fan than in that moment. Mario, if you're listening, please write in and tell Sean why he's wrong.
Oh, your friend Mario, not Super Mario. I mean, because that has something to do with
Mario, please write in too.
Licensed music.
Oh. Well, maybe that's partially the similar. Is that what you're kind of getting at, Ryan? Is that what you mean by that?
No, it was just such a cringy moment. Like, why was that?
To me, it was about. It felt like the vibe, right? Like all these people who don't belong, who are the misfits.
Yeah,
that's what Guardians is. They're the anti-Avengers.
But they're all together. They're not misfits if they're together. They're a team. And it was played to Rocket walking around. If anything, it would be for Peter.
Well, I mean, they may be together,
really.
but I think that kind of speaks of what they're getting at. They're together, but they're not. They're not. They're physically together, but this whole film is about them all finding themselves and knowing that like they're not emotionally there. Rocket has never been emotionally with the rest, like with anyone, right? Like he's always been removed and felt odd and different, and that's what they all do to an extent.
Oh, I want to weigh in. So
I don't know. That's kind of what I got from the use of that song.
Sean, you loved it. Ryan, you didn't. I thought it was just fine. And if anything, I would say my biggest criticism with it is that it's too on the nose. I think with Rocket, it's like, yeah, I'm a creep, I'm a weirdo. It's like, yeah, in the other movies, he's like, I don't really if you go back to his drunken rant in the first movie, where he's talking about like, oh, you guys are just gonna call me a freak, and you guys are gonna mistreat me or whatever, and everyone's like, no, dude, what the hell? We're trying to be nice to you, and he's like, no, everybody's just always that way, and you could tell he has this baggage, he has this like, you know, all this emotional weight that he's carrying that nobody really understands, and part of that is because he won't let anybody in, and so it's like he legitimately is a mutated freak. But he's also the most closed off one of all the Guardians. So yeah, I think that the song is appropriate. I think it's too good of a choice. I think it hits the nail.
Wow,
on the head
I could
easily,
not. I completely disagree. There's an entire city full of inhabitants, all of which are coexisting in harmony. They don't point fingers at each other and saying, oh, you're a weirdo. We have one guy that has a mohawk and controls an arrow with his brain. We have a talking dog, a psychic talking dog. Like, everyone there is a weirdo.
Ryan, exactly. I think that's the point. That's the point.
That's what I'm saying. That song is not what that song is about. That is not what that song is about. It's a complete misinterpretation of that song. So
I guess what I'm saying is that, yes, they are all together, but they are all still weirdos, right?
In what context?
You just said they were weirdos.
Weirdness is relative.
Well, okay, let me put it this way. They all feel like weirdos then, and that's why that song's appropriate.
No, I want to
I wish the movie would have told me that.
I thought that the reading was pretty clear that because Rocket has just such a massive chip on his shoulder, he thinks he's got this special snowflake syndrome where he's like, I'm so misunderstood. Nobody will ever get me. And you're supposed to be like, no, dude, you're wallowing in your self-pity. You're the only, like, look around you. Everybody else is a misfit, right? You need to get over yourself and realize that you have your found family right here. Like, that's the point, is that he thinks that he's a misfit, when really the misfits are his family, which also ties into the end of the movie really nicely because, you know, when they turn nowhere into, we accept everybody. It doesn't matter where you're from. All these kids, all these animals, whatever. You can all live here. But Rocket is just carrying this emotional weight. He's just psychologically damaged. So I think, I mean, if anything, Ryan, what you're saying is, I feel like proof that it is the right choice because he is misinterpreting those lyrics as well. Right? That's how I feel. I feel like it's pretty...
So that's a complete rewriting of the canon of the song.
I think it hits the nose...
Which I don't disagree with, because that is one of the most inappropriately used songs in all of, like... I mean, it was used in the trailer for Renfield. Like, it's overused and never used correctly.
I think that...
So, in that way, I agree with you.
I think that also adds more validity to my interpretation, in that being that, like, no, Rocket, you're not a freak, you're not a weirdo. Right?
I just wish... you're right. I did forget that he felt that way in the previous films. So it's my fault for not having seen those films recently enough to remember that.
Yeah, and in Guardians 2, he has a whole fight with... who was it with? He has a fight with, I think, Quill in the forest when they first get to when they're on the planet before they go to the ego planet, and Quill's like, dude, what is your problem? Everybody's just trying to be nice to you. What is it about you that makes you think that you are the only one who's tortured and you're the only one who has a tragic life? Like, we all do. Get over yourself. Right? And I think that opening speaks really well to his drunken rant in the first movie, that fight they have in the second movie, and then his arc in this movie is him, like resolving that. Right? Because we get to actually dive in and see firsthand his backstory, and we get to see why he feels that way. So the whole thing is, it's the Rocket story. So I think that sets the tone of the movie really well. And anyway.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, I think the tone wise too. I mean, aside from maybe the interpretation of the song, I think at least the tone it sets is also what I liked about it. Because I think it set a tone that's a little bit more introspective and dark and mature, and maybe not dark. Dark's it's a cliche word, but more mature. Something that is, I mean, which kind of speaks, I think, to the film at large. Another thing I appreciate about it is that, in the end, it does become a little bit more of a, save the galaxy type of thing. But in general, the film's plot and story is very small. It is very low stakes in terms of what they are trying to do. It is very personal for all of them. And it allows each of those personal journeys to be, more apparent and take center stage, as opposed to, a galaxy-ending threat, which has been the case for every adventure we've seen them in, pretty much so far. So,
yeah, Rocket's character, he's a jerk the entire trilogy, but for up until this movie, not even just the trilogy, all the other movies, he's a jerk, but he's funny.
Yeah.
And I feel like everybody at some point has known a person like that. Like, they're kind of a jerk, but they're fun to have around, so we kind of put up with their jerkishness. But then you also kind of know there's probably something really dark under the surface. And I kind of feel like we knew that when we first meet Rocket in the first movie. So, yeah, it's weird, and this speaks to some of the reasons why I'm... Like, Sean, you said that you thought that this is a perfect ending for the trilogy. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure about that.
Do you mean for, just the characters, or just in terms of in general? Like, it wasn't satisfying? I guess what I mean by that is for the character-wise, I thought it was a great way to... I mean, hopefully we do see some of these characters again. Who knows what it means. But if we don't, I'm very happy with where we have come with all of these characters and where we have come with them together. The journey of them, the story of them being together.
I guess what is it for me? It's a very, very good Rocket movie. Mm-hmm. And you were talking about the scope of the story itself. The first movie and the second movie both had universal stakes. Like, we can't get the bad guy to get the planet destroying weapon in the first one. In the second one, we can't let the bad guy get the universe destroying power. Right, this one it's like we just gotta save Rocket.
Yeah.
Even the bad guy's like, like the biggest thing at stake is like he wants to blow up his own planet. Yeah. Like,
and he does.
And he does, right? And he wants to get Rocket back so he can continue his research.
Yeah.
Like, we don't know where that's gonna go. So stakes are a lot smaller in this one. It's a lot more personal because we care about Rocket and we want him to live. Mm-hmm. So it's a really good Rocket story, but I don't feel like it's a good end of a trilogy. It doesn't feel like an end of a trilogy to me. Or you're saying that you think it leaves the characters in a good place. I feel like the idea of it being the end of the trilogy feels very rushed at the end of the movie. I feel like there's too many other things going on, and then it's like, oh, okay, well, all right. Anyway, so this person left, and this person did this, and this person did this, and okay, yeah. When the whole thing is so Rocket centric, it doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't feel like... I don't feel like it does justice to the other characters. Especially when you have, Quill and Gamora, they have this thing that's set up over several movies, and then they delete that from, they kill the original Gamora. That doesn't feel like it has enough time to develop in this movie for it to then end. and because the first two movies are mostly Peter's story, for this one to all of a sudden be Rocket's story and then end the series, that feels off to me. I think that's why I can't quite land in a comfortable place.
I see
with
what
this
you're
movie.
saying, and I feel that a little bit. I do think it is interesting how Peter's the main character, but he doesn't feel like the main character. I mean, and by which I mean just like he's the protagonist for the most part, as much as it is Rocket's story, but Peter's doing the stuff in the scenes, right? And then I do feel like I would agree with you with the Peter stuff at the end. I feel like then at the end he's like, oh, but wait, it is Peter's movie, so he has to have kind of we got to end on him, and it has to have him have the kind of like final moments. When I think it would have worked better if we did end with Rocket and Groot, on dancing, whatever, on Nowhere. But I thought all the other, I liked the other characters' conclusions, or at least where we left them. I see what you're saying in terms of maybe the end feeling a little like, oh, now we got to cram all this in. And yeah, I could understand that perspective. I appreciate that. I guess I didn't feel that way. To me, it felt like a recognition of all of them as a team together, realizing it's the end of a chapter, and that Peter and Rocket kind of are the catalyst for all of them to kind of like have these times to make a change and to, whether that's find themselves or become a leader in a different way or to shift how they are interacting with the Guardians. It just felt like, those were they all still worked for me.
But why is it the end though? I mean, what is it? What is the major? Why is it? They, other than the fact that they decide it is. I mean, so Peter's got he's got a grandpa now, and I guess we're gonna care about the grandpa. But then at the end it says Star-Lord will return, but just Star-Lord. But to me, I feel like, the other characters got a good amount of chance to. So like the second movie was all about Peter and his backstory with ego and him coming to terms with this power that is bestowed upon him, and also his thing with Gamora. It's like kind of like, well, he hasn't really earned that relationship because he's still dealing with his literal ego, so he hasn't really matured enough to handle that relationship, and so they give a lot of time in the first two movies for him to be like, will they, won't they? I don't know. He's not mature enough for this. He's not ready. But then they delete all of that. And I get to me, it feels like James Gunn is really, really focused on wanting to tell the Rocket story now. But it had all these other little loose ends that had a lot of time spent developing. Peter and Gamora was one of them. Right. And they kind of just have to, okay, well, all right, we're, and then Gamora disappearing and all that. It feels like the focus shifts, and then it doesn't ever shift back enough for us to have enough time with it. So yeah, I don't know. It's a weird one for me. But
I think for me, like, I never really thought about the Guardians movies as like a trilogy,
right?
Because there wasn't necessarily a lot of continuity. Like, oh, we're picking up where we left off, sure. But this didn't feel like the conclusion of a trilogy. It felt like a volume 3.
Yeah, maybe that's a better way to put it. When we think of trilogies, we think of them as a singular, sprawling story or epic or whatever.
Right.
When I meant the conclusion, I don't necessarily mean the conclusion of a trilogy, but a conclusion of this franchise and how it has been portrayed. Sorry to interrupt, Ryan, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, like there's a lot to juggle in terms of characters stuff throughout the 3 movies. So, the first 2 do focus on kind of more Peter-centric, I suppose. But I wasn't in any way, like, I liked that this was a Rocket story. I liked that this story was small in scope. I think too many of these movies are like, it's the end of the universe, or, at risk here. The disadvantage of doing a smaller scope sometimes can be then, well, like, why is there an antagonist at all? Like, can't we just have this story be that we have to save Rocket, and then it's more like we get to explore characters more, and we get to do these little smaller challenges. I think this movie did a great job of making the bad guy integral into a smaller story,
Yes.
which is I think is kind of hard to do, or at least not done well often. So I thought that was really well done.
Yeah, I thought that too. It reminded me of a little bit the first Ant-Man movie, where Yellow Jacket, he's just a corporate guy who just wants to sell his weapons. Like, we don't know what he's going to sell it to Hydra. We don't know what Hydra's going to do if he does sell it to him, but like, that's not what's at stake right now. Like, we just need to make sure we can steal this away from him so he can't do bad things with it later on down the line. Right? That's what this feels like in this movie. The High Evolutionary, he's our immediate adversary because he's the one who we need to get the kill code from. And we know that he's probably going to be up to some bad stuff later on down the road if he's successful at whatever he's doing, but they kind of leave it, vague enough to where they could have played around with that more in the future if they wanted to. They didn't, So,
no, I actually completely agree, because I was thinking like, oh, this movie doesn't even need to have ended with the defeat of High Evolutionary.
Right.
That wasn't their goal. He could have, he's, conceivably been around for hundreds or thousands of years, blowing up planets left and right, because he kind of he blows up the counter Earth like it's nothing. So
he says there are entire planets that think of him as a god. So, yeah, you're probably right about that.
Right. So, and I think is he considered like one of the big, like, Marvel villains? I don't know if he is, but anyway.
Yeah, I think he's on the same scale as like Celestials or whatever, something like that, right?
Right, like it just kind of being this. Yeah. So it could be that, like, we don't necessarily need to defeat all these, like, big time celestial big bads. They were able to ward him off and get, achieve their objectives, and that's the story we really care about anyway. I don't like, how does he die? I don't think it was necessarily very satisfying.
Well, that's the thing, is that like in the cartoons and in the comics, it's like a lot of them are just like the bad guys like, I've been foiled again, but I'll get you next time. And that's one of the aspects I think is really missing from the MCU, because we like to see our favorite heroes come back, but we very rarely get to see our favorite villains come back.
Oh, completely agree. I think they've done themselves a disservice by killing off. I think what does one of the guys comes back, the hammer guy from the first one, right? He comes back. He's in a couple of them, right? He's in 3 of them.
Hammer?
What's his name? Hammer Boy.
Hammer Boy
in Marvel?
What are we talking about?
The villain from the first Guardians.
Hammer Boy.
Ronan or whatever.
Ronan? He appears, I guess. He's in
Hammer Boy? That's what you get. Yeah, he was in
his weapon is a hammer.
Yes, he was in the Captain Marvel, and I think he shows up in something else too.
Yeah, I think it does.
Yeah, okay, but yeah, just that feeling, that exciting feeling you get when you're, watching the cartoon or reading the comic, and you go, not this guy again, right? Because we know what he's about, and you're like, really? Come on, all right, okay.
And the High Evolutionary, like, I actually really liked him. I thought he was such a good, like, I love to hate him, right? Like, there's the whole thing, like the save the cat thing for a hero. This guy is like, no, I'm gonna torture and mutilate the cat, like, literally. So we instantly hate him, and it's actually it was pretty disturbing, to be honest. I thought they went too far, but
yeah, a lot of people did. There's a lot of talk about how it's hard for some people to watch this movie because of the animal cruelty in it. But I guess animal cruelty is a really easy way to make you hate the bad guy.
Yeah. Oh, sure is. It worked. But I would love to have seen, because, like, a lot of these villains, right, have this, like, very lofty goal, and you're kind of like, okay, let me think about what you're saying here, like. Right, that's like I've said this before on the podcast. Like, it's kind of a fun idea to think about Thanos' agenda, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it's like, okay, all right, it doesn't make sense, but you're also kind of like, oh, is he right? I mean, not really, but you know what I'm saying. Like, it's a fun thing to conceptually fight against.
I think what it is that he's addressing a problem and then coming up with a solution, and you're going, okay, I don't agree with the solution, but that problem is a problem.
Right, there you go.
And so it's easier for you to kind of like lean into his plight and make you feel things.
Right. Well, not that the high evolutionary's objective is like understandable or sympathetic in any way, but it's still like an interesting premise that I was like, I want to see more of, like, okay, where could you take this? Because we didn't really even get to see, we got to see a planet of these weird animal humans, which was played more for humor than it was any sort of like, okay, what are you actually doing with this guy? So I would have loved to see him come back in another movie.
Well, he's not dead. So.
I thought he gets his face ripped off or something.
He does, but then they don't kill him. Remember, Rocket? He's like, "Why don't you kill him?" And then he goes, "Nah, because we're the freaking Guardians of the Galaxy." Right?
Yeah, I think he I feel like he very easily could just come back out of the blue, and I wouldn't really question it. Like,
I guess that's true.
There'd be any number of ways he could have survived.
Yeah, I mean, I guess his ship blew up, but it's like we didn't see him die, so...
Well, especially if his whole deal is making people more efficient and being better at living. You know, like, he's got all kinds of augments and stuff. I don't know. I would believe he could breathe in space or whatever. I don't know. Like, come up with some goofy sci-fi explanation. Doesn't matter. I would...
Okay, cool. I hope... They should have ended the movie with the High Evolutionary will return, not stupid Peter Quill. No one cares about him.
Yeah, I was surprised that they didn't end it with... What's in face? The Golden Boy will return. Adam Warlock will return, because I guess he's a character, right? People like him, or he's important, or something.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that was another the first
that was another
scene.
Point. Yeah. I wanted to bring that up earlier too. Is like, you know, I was saying, you know, it just seemed like James Gunn was just only interested in the Rocket story, because it's like, okay, you have Peter and Gamora being a different Gamora. Not interested in that. Okay, also the second Guardians, Adam Warlock is my new creation. Well, I guess we have to have it. I'm not really interested in it, though.
Yeah, like, I think that was one thing I was saying, like, it is tricky juggling so many characters, but I do feel like, while we didn't get a lot of Adam Warlock, I still felt satisfied by his arc. Like, yeah, is it really that intricate or unique? No, but I think the beats hit where they needed to, and it gave me a satisfying ending for his character. I mean, the movie could have easily happened without him.
Yeah, I'm really glad that's how you felt, because that's just not how I felt, and it felt like he's here because he has to be, and the Gamora Peter stuff is here because it has to be. And when I was saying to Sean earlier that I don't feel like this is a good conclusion to a trilogy, if that's what we're going to say that it is, it's because I don't feel like those puzzle pieces came together in a satisfying way. I think a lot of the things that should have been bigger are in the background.
Well, that's what I was thinking. Like, from my perspective, this wasn't part of a trilogy. It's just volume 3 of a continuing saga. Right. And I think where they left characters and what they did with the characters, it kind of fits into that. Like, this isn't some like ending point for their characters. This shows the transitory state of existence that it's always in, and this is just where we're leaving these characters for now. Right. It's not that, it's not like they're living happily ever after. It's not like they died. This is not a conclusion.
Well, I guess this is something I did want to address too, and inevitably this comes up in every MCU conversation, but where the real world creeps into the writing, and in that being James Gunn saying several times, this is my last time doing Guardians, so for me this is a conclusion. Mm-hmm. And for a lot of the Guardians actors saying, yeah, my contract's up, so I'm done. Drax, the guy, Dave Bautista being like, I can't physically do this anymore, I can't keep up with the workout routine. He said, if Drax is ever in these movies again, he won't be played by me. Right, and it just seems like... Oh, and Zoe Saldana, I think she also said she's not going to do it anymore. So, essentially, in a meta way, in the real world, yeah, it is a conclusion, because everybody who's making this movie is treating it as such.
Well, I guess maybe that's kind of what... So, let's say there's a Guardians Volume 4 that comes out in years or whatever, but it is the squad that we see at the end of this with, mm-hmm. Adam Warlock and the Kid and Sean Gunn and Rocket and Groot and whatever, different Guardians. That makes sense to me, but this would still feel like this volume would still feel like a conclusion of this team of Guardians. And I guess maybe that's a better way to put it, is to me that the stuff you're talking about, Chewie, I understand, like, maybe wanting more Peter and Gamora because they were so that's such a prominent part of the first two entries. But the conclusion that they came to, I felt satisfied with. Like, they could have done more with it in this, but I was actually pretty happy with where they landed with them.
Yeah, I was happy that they took it the angle they did.
Yeah.
I mean, in a way, it's almost like Marvel dealt James Gunn like a bad hand in terms of like, hey, we're gonna kill off Gamora.
Yeah.
Right.
So
yeah.
But I think that shows a little bit of the talent of James Gunn writing that into this story and making it feel correct. Like, I think this is the right way to have done it. Granted, I do have some problems with kind of the how of it, specifically the fact that, like, okay, we know Peter Quill is not the smartest guy, but he realizes that two separate humans or beings do not share memories. Like, hey Matt, remember when I went to Coachella? Mm-hmm. And remember how that one specific instance happened?
Oh yeah, I remember.
Oh, okay, because we share memories. I forgot.
No, I mean, memories. Like, I think.
Like, he's not that stupid.
No,
like,
he's not, and I have to really. This is where I have to try to use some empathy or in trying to understand, put my mind into someone of like how traumatic it would be to lose somebody that you love, and then they're there again. Like, there's some massive denial going on. I don't think he's that stupid. I think he's mentally ill is more likely. You know, he's going through.
To me, it was coping.
I think
coping
I can
yeah.
maybe believe that. I think the real reason is because they realized that the audience is not going to be able to keep up unless we hammer it home to remind them that she died and she's a different person. So we have to have Peter keep asking the question.
Right.
So they
remind.
Yeah.
I think that's a very valid point. I think what I said is how we're supposed to read it, but I also think that what you're saying is, and again, real world creeping into this with the writing. It's like, well, did the audience all do their homework? We better do this just in case. You know, and that's another thing that we're always talking about is the amount of homework that is necessary, you know, as farther into this whole thing that we get. So he's not, we're not supposed to read him as that dumb. We know he isn't.
I mean, to me, it's just the same. Like, I think it's the same as when in a zombie movie and someone goes, "Oh, mom," and they go, "No, she's a zombie," and the person says, "She's like," it's easy for us as jaded, intellectually thinking media consumers to go, "Just shoot her. It's not your mom. It's obviously not your mom. Why do you have like?" I want to try to not be so cynical, 100, but in this case, I think there's an element to it where it's like she does have the same memories up to a certain point. So in a lot of ways, she is the same person, right? Like up until 5 years ago. So it's not like she's a completely different person and she's not a zombie who's trying to attack him. So like, I think there's enough that he does and says where he's saying, "My Gamora," right? I think at first there is that same beat, but I think that it evolves a bit, or the discussion changes where he starts going into more of "My Gamora," where he starts to at least articulate that, yes, he understands they're different, but look what we could be. My Gamora did like this and this. Why aren't you like, and I think that's a very, what's the right word? It felt real in a human emotional way to
it
face with that situation.
Ryan, you said in the recap, the summary, that he's like, he's kind of sad, but like, no, he was like dealing with some really hardcore alcoholism.
Yeah.
Like everybody,
to
the point when all of your friends are commenting regularly about how drunk Peter is and how he's drunk again. Like, he's dealing with some hardcore alcoholism, right? I think he's in a very, very, very bad place mentally. And Sean, what you were saying about, we'd like to believe that we would just shoot the zombie family relative.
Yeah.
I think another example is, if you're watching like a slasher flick and you want to yell at the screen, like, "No, pick up the thing and hit him with the thing," or "No, do this. No, don't go that way. Run that way." Or, you're kind of trying to coach the character as if you know better as to how to get out of that situation. And I will admit I'm totally guilty of this. But what you don't really take into account is how adrenaline affects your body physics and how, like, your fight or flight and stuff. And it's like, it's easier said than done, right? It's easier to look at a character it's easy to look at a character like Peter and go, "You idiot. You know it's not the right person. It's the same person. but it's a little bit more to kind of really be like, okay, try to feel like that actually happened to you, right? Like, you're having mental breakdowns and you're depressed and you're questioning what's real and not, and I don't know, your brain breaks. People's brains break. That's the thing.
I think there is definitely a meta scene with it all. What you're kind of talking about, Ryan, and Chewie, both of you were saying, where he was dealt a bad hand, and it's the elevator scene when they're on that Oglethorpe, whatever that weird bio...
The meat building.
The meat building. And where he's basically summarizing all of the Avengers, Infinity War, and Endgame in that elevator exposition dialogue. And I think it's actually pretty funny, but I think there's a meta level to it where it's almost like James Gunn going like, this is what I have to deal with. Because he kind of like, in the way he's saying it, right? Like, it kind of comes across as like, all right, this is what happened, and just, I had to deal with it, and it's ridiculous, right? Listen to what I'm saying. It's ridiculous. This is stupid, right? But I guess this is what I gotta deal with, so, yeah.
Yeah. On an unrelated note, when they broke into the meat building, and they cut the little circle, and they pulled the little plug out, did any of you guys think that looked like a delicious ham?
I don't remember thinking that either time I saw it. But...
Both times I thought that. When they cut the little circle, the little hatch to break in, they pulled out a circular, like a cylindrical chunk of meat. It made me hungry both times.
Well, there's a lot of... I did note that there is a lot of people eating in this film. There's a lot of just like awesome, great just scenes and stuff of people eating things and drinking things. Nebula has like skewers when they're on the planet. They're always like, they have like little drinks, sci-fi, like fast food and stuff. There's a lot
zargnuts.
Yeah, zargnuts. Exactly.
Which they sell at the Disney parks now, where they have Guardians Reds by zargnuts. Or maybe just Epcot. I'm not sure. Anyway, what's happening? What's going on?
Food.
Yeah. So, okay, I want to complain about this movie some more. So also the structure was weird, and I had hoped that on second viewing, it would have been a little bit more clear, but it wasn't. And Ryan, I feel like I'm validated by your recap of the movie when you're like, they went back to nowhere. Or wait, no, nowhere came to them. Or they smashed and then someone was on this place. I feel like there's a good 30 minutes where people are just like jumping back and forth between locations. And I'm like, I don't know who's where. I don't know why those people are where they are. And I feel like most of this is wasting my time. And I had hoped that on first viewing, that was just because there was so much action happening that I was just caught up in the moment. But no, on second viewing, I felt the same way. I'm just like, there's a lot of, it feels like what's a lot of filler in a lot of those action scenes. It feels like there's several moments that's the climax where they could then end the story, and then there's like another climax. Did you guys feel that way at all?
I didn't have a problem so much with the structure, but I do agree that like in that, I guess, end of second act, third act beginning, where there's a lot of kind of running around and action, that kind of, it got confusing. Granted, this, I'm talking about a movie I saw 2 months ago, so
right,
doesn't say too much, but yeah, I think maybe it's because, like, I don't know, just getting older, but like sometimes there's like, yes, this is an action IP, they have to have action scenes, but that like final action scene where it's like one, it's a fake one shot. Well, it's a cool scene, and yeah, you have to have a final action scene with all your Guardians in a movie. But it also felt like we didn't need that. Like
a lot of it felt like that way. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, some of the action was fine. It was like, okay, yeah, they're coming in here, they're busting up the joint. But that one is like, I could have done without this one. Yeah.
Wait, there were a lot of little moments where they're like, oh no, so and so's still on over there, and I'm like, wait, they are? I thought they were here. And then like, oh, Gamora and the Ravagers are back, and I'm like, oh, they left? What? Like, it's just, I feel like the editing and the jumping back and forth between all the characters is just, it's messy. It felt messy to me, and it was starting to creep into like wake me up when it's over mode. Kind of like the ending of Solo, where everybody's backstabbing each other. And I'm like, okay, you're losing me. Just like, come on, like, get to whatever the point is. Get to the point. You know?
I think I did have a moment. It was when Rocket is like, he's flying some ship and there's like 1 billion bullets on screen. And like, that was like the point of my brain where like, yeah, it kind of gets to that like, okay, am I checking out? I don't know what's going on. But it was only for a second, and then it kind of, that scene only lasts for, 15 seconds, and then he crashes, and then it's like, oh, okay, we're and now I know where people are again.
Yeah, it's definitely something that definitely watching it a second time helped a lot. Because I remember after my first viewing, I still loved it after watching the first time, but I do remember thinking during bits and parts of it, it was a little bit hard to like specifically follow, like not just scene by scene, especially like you guys are saying, the running around. There's a little bit in the middle there. But even some of the, like, okay, the plot of, like, why is this person doing that? Especially with, so that sequence when they're on the planet, when they're on Counter-Earth, and they're divided up, and then Adam Warlock comes and attacks, and then they move around, and Gamora's fighting him, and they're, like, they're fighting on the ship, then they're off the ship, then they're back on the ship again. Like, that stuff was, on a second viewing, much improved, but there were still some bits that were just like, wait, why, like... Why is this person running here now? But
I just felt like all of that needed to be tightened up. I felt like all of that part of the script needed another pass, and where people were and what they were doing at any given time, I feel like needed to be more purposeful. Because in the meantime, they're dealing with all these important story beats and Rocket stuff, and it feels like, okay, we need to tell this part of Rocket's story, or now we need to have this character beat.
Well, a big part of it too is it's them following specifically the High Evolutionary's henchman who has the code, and on the second viewing, that's much more apparent. Like, that's why they're doing so much of what they're doing, is they're tracking that specific guy onto the planet, up into the High Evolutionary spaceship, right? So that follows them, and it okay, if you follow that. But yeah, a lot of that stuff. The other thing too, I think maybe what speaks a little bit to the structure, maybe, Chewy, is, and this is something I actually liked. It wasn't so much a negative for me, but the third act, this is a very long third act.
Yes. Yes.
And I agree, there's some parts where maybe there's a little bit too indulgent on some of the actions, just explosion-y kind of stuff. But overall, I was pretty into the entire, like, once kind of Rocket wakes up again. I think also because we didn't get any Rocket for its first 2/3 of this film, as much as it is a Rocket movie, it's just like, oh, I'm missing the Rocket, like, stuff. I want to see Rocket interacting with people and, being a hero and doing cool stuff. So because that third act was longer and he was in it, very, obviously profiled, it helped that. And I totally understand, like, for whatever reason, that action hallway sequence, I loved it. And if it was another franchise or another film or maybe something that for whatever reason, I was fine with the overindulgence there, but it's not an excuse for it necessarily.
No, I think that does go a long way, because I think there are, like, we've been with these characters for quite a while now. So and for me, I liked everything that was done with each of the characters. Like, I found myself liking Nebula.
Oh yeah, Nebula was maybe
right. She was amazing. Like, I loved her character so much in this movie, even though, like, okay, she kind of takes a backseat to all the other stories kind of going on, but you really get a good sense of her characterization and how she kind of is stepping up into a leadership role, and you see those character moments for her throughout the film. So where she ends at the film feels earned, and I think for me they do a good job with that for all these characters. And Sean, like you're saying, there's a lot of I don't know, they've garnered goodwill towards that. So when we do get these overindulgent moments, I'm not rolling my eyes. I'm enjoying the scene, but then in retrospect, I'm like, oh, maybe that didn't need to be there, or whatever, more on an analytical perspective. But that
totally makes sense.
Sitting in my movie seat, I'm enjoying every minute. Yeah,
and I mean, and I totally, that was another huge kind of thing which we haven't got too much into. But I totally agree with, as much as it is a Rocket movie, I think all of the characters, I remember reading some criticism that, like, a lot of the characters don't get featured enough. I don't know. I disagree. I thought all the characters. I loved all the characters' stories in this film. Now, obviously, with a cast of 6 primaries and stories for a good group of secondary characters, they can't all be equal per se. But for a cast this big, I thought it was surprisingly cohesive in terms of all of these characters feeling like they've become gone on an emotional journey and having not just a single beat or just a one-dimensional Drax. I thought was I think one thing that kind of I don't know, made it kind of come into focus is one of my favorite scenes is when they're on the alien planet and they're all in the house. And it's one of the funniest scenes in the movie. I thought I loved.
Oh yeah,
and they're all just goofing Drax that. It's oh, they're a family, and that sounds so stupid. Of course they're a family, Sean. That's what all movies are about, family. But that is
especially Fast and the Furious,
but especially Star Wars, but especially Guardians of the Galaxy. They're all. It's literally Nebula is the mom. She's telling to sit up. It is literally just a family scene when you're hanging out with your family. Sit up. No, don't drink. Don't that's what's going on. And Nebula, I think, to your point and to what you're saying, Ryan, she totally is the mom. And I don't just mean that she's a woman and she's an adult woman, so she has to be a mom. I just mean in terms of her instinct, her role, the caretaker, and which is something I thought picked up a little bit more on the second viewing, is that she was always taking the moral high ground on everything. Anytime there was a question, when they're shooting people in the bio building, Gamora's just constantly I'm going to shoot him. And Nebula's the one, do not shoot people. Yeah. She is constantly, of all people, Nebula is the one that is always taking the the high ground, right? Things like that throughout the film for all the characters.
Yeah, and I think
were awesome.
By having that contrast, so again, this goes to what I would consider skillful writing on the part of James Gunn, because if we consider where those two characters, those sisters, started at the beginning of the three of the Guardians of the Galaxy, it's Nebula is the villain, she's the bloodthirsty murderer. And we see Gamora grow into a softer character, but then having her character be erased, we get to see the contrast of where that character specifically, well, actually of both of them, how much they've grown over the series. Granted, Gamora got reset, but just so in other words, the reason I give credit to James Gunn for that is because he was able to take lemons and make lemonade, right? He was, like I said, he was dealt a very tough hand, but made it very meaningful for both characters. Yeah,
and I think too, and to the Gamora side of things, I also really appreciate, and this kind of goes into a little bit with her relationship with Peter. Like I said, I like where they went with that relationship and where it kind of ended, but just as her as a character of her being this harder version of Gamora than we're used to, but not being bad per se. She's not a bad guy or a bad person, but she's just not one of the Guardians. She doesn't belong there.
Yeah.
And being okay with that, and just as us as an audience also being okay with that. That last scene when everyone's hugging and they all saved, and it's whatever, all the kids and everyone's there, and her just realizing this isn't this is not where I belong.
Right.
I don't know. I think that's a really, maybe not really, but it's a mature take on a giant, bombastic, mainstream action film. For it not all to be we're all going to be together forever as best friends. We're the 3 best friends that anyone has ever had. The 3 best friends that anyone.
Well, yeah, I started out by saying that the level of maturity that this film shows, as compared to where the series started, and so I very much agree. I think the easy route would have been obviously to have Peter and Gamora get back together, and obviously have maybe they're not back together, but Gamora wants to stick around. Yeah, I like that they left it where they did. And my take was that it's not like they're never going to see each other again, and she's going to have her own growth and her life experiences, and that's going to take her in a different direction. I think that's something we should respect as her character.
Yeah. And they even nod that they give each other, like the kind of grunt and a nod and a smile as they kind of walk at the last scene, Gamora and Nebula.
Oh yeah, I love that. Great. Yeah.
Another, just some more kind of character stuff. I mentioned Drax, but like the conclusion with Drax, again, maybe this is too on the nose, I guess, but I don't know. For me, it worked and it was really touching. Is when it's like, oh, Drax, you're not a destroyer, you're a dad. Like, oh yeah, again, playing into the family and his role and what like his maturity.
Well,
and stuff.
That's how his whole journey started, right? Is by losing his family.
Yeah,
and so he gained a new one. Like, it's just like there's these little moments where maybe Drax doesn't get a lot, but he gets just the right amount or whatever.
Yeah, the whole thing being about all these characters have huge emotional baggage because they come from broken or toxic family situations, and they're like, who your family is and how you interact with them completely shapes who you are as a person. So I think what you're saying about Gamora, I like how that is left off too, because it's like that she does not have, she isn't the person because she didn't have that family.
Yes,
right. She's not the same person, and I think Peter realizes that, and that's good. That's good. Yeah. There's good stuff in there.
Yes.
Yeah. But one other note, music has kind of always played a big role in these movies, and I think they did it pretty well in this one. Obviously, it was like a big kind of personal thing for Peter because it's memories of home and that kind of thing. So I like that they didn't put too much of a focus on it on this one, because that shtick kind of was getting old, and it was fine. All the music choices were good for the most part, and that was cool because that's sort of the Guardians, one of the things it has to do. But I was kind of like, okay, yeah, we get it. It's a song from the 90s. Okay, let's move on with the story here. It wasn't that distracting, but there were some things where it's like, yeah, okay, it's a Guardians movie. They have to do this. It didn't feel, I guess what I'm saying, it didn't feel inspired.
As
compared to like the first one.
I would maybe agree with that. I don't think it bothered me per se. Anyway. I was generally very happy with everything, but I did think to myself multiple times, because of our Mario episode and how much we were all ragging on it, and one of our collective least favorite things, and people I've talked to, least favorite things about the film are the needle drops there. And why do they work for me in the Guardians films? And they work because of things what you just said, Ryan, of like it's how it's baked into the story and the character and other reasons. But there is that kind of lingering questions like, am I giving credit? Why am I giving credit to them here but not to this other thing here when they're kind of doing the same thing? They're not, and it's obviously a different, shows a different level of skill. But I don't know, just something I was thinking of. I will say though that
part of it is it's not diegetic like in Mario.
Yeah, that is
arguably diegetic here.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's kind of a fun where they kind of have their cake and eat it too, where it's the excuse of like, this is diegetic. They're listening to it, but obviously it's played over montages, and so like they could come both ways. Also, this was not actually in the film, but during the credits, Bruce Springsteen Badlands, which was kind of like cool. Oh, they got some Springsteen in there. But also Chris Pratt is in 2 movies with No Sleep Till Brooklyn. Funny.
Yeah, I did make it. I didn't write it down, but when I was watching Guardians, I was like, oh wow, really? Okay, that's funny.
But yeah, I mean, it's definitely a huge aspect of these films. So I would agree. Maybe it's not as good as the first or even the second one, but I still think it was something I liked from this film overall.
Yeah, like it wasn't something I disliked at all. It was just kind of like I was more like aware of it. Yeah. I don't know.
And then also like that ending. I like that ending. I almost wish they just cut hard when Groot and Rocket are dancing. Like I almost felt like, ooh, that was my emotional high, that moment of just like when everyone's kind of down there nowhere and everyone's just kind of left, and now it's up to Rocket, the guy who always felt like he didn't belong, has always just kind of begrudgingly been part of this team. Now it's his job to be the emotional center of this, to lead. And what does he do? He dances, boom, cut it out there. Like that to me, like felt was, and there was too many other stories, and maybe this kind of goes to what you were saying, Chewie, where they had to kind of resolve a lot of other things. All that being said, I really like that ending sequence again. Just the I don't know, it was a less obvious choice to me. Feist, of all things, it was just like, oh, okay, Feist.
No, I think wasn't it Florence and the Machine?
Oh, was it Florence? Yeah, sorry, Florence and the Machine.
Yeah, it was a weird choice. That was one. It was weird, and also like the CG dancing Groot.
Oh, yeah.
A little cringe, but it was an interesting choice for sure.
The gag too with Gamora, just like, you guys are just making up what he's saying. I thought that was funny.
Oh, I enjoyed that. Yeah.
I will like. Yeah. Sorry, I was gonna say I think this is the least funny of them, but there were a lot of really good funny moments. But I thought the first two were funnier.
I think for me, the humor didn't work as well in this movie because I think it clashed with the tone. Mm-hmm. This movie definitely had a darker tone than the first two, and I think the humor was like not autopilot, but like, okay, this is the kind of humor people are going to expect, and if we have a darker tone, we got to do more of it. But it didn't. I don't know. It didn't quite gel with me.
I think part of it is that Chris Pratt in the first two is such a source of that humor. He's awkward, kind of charming, but goofball kind of thing. And because what you're saying, Chewie, he is in such a different emotional place, he can't really play that. And we don't really want him to be that because it would undermine his character in this movie. I
think the humor for me it still did work. And I think like they could have played into maybe, I don't want to say dark humor, but like that angle of humor more. I think like the part of the movie where he's in the car and he's trying to get Nebula to open the door, which I thought that was really funny. Like, and that style of humor was right because he's getting angry at her, right? They could have played that sort of angle, where he's getting frustrated and angry, and he's just like, now lift the effing handle, right? They drop the F-bomb.
The first F-bomb in the MCU.
That bit reminded me of like an Always Sunny sequence. Where it's like, they're all family and they love each other, but they also kind of hate each other, and they're just screaming and getting frustrated. Yeah, right. And I think that this movie could have used more of that flavor.
Yeah, I think that tone could have exactly that flavor would have been perfect more often. Like, for me, the humor worked pretty well. Like, just
I'm not saying
normal goofy stuff, but I think it would have been also kind of like a show of additional like evolution in terms of like, we're growing the characters, we're growing the style of humor, like come along with this ride with us, like we're taking this in new places, and anytime they did so, I was on board. So I think they could have taken even more risks in that regard.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to say the humor didn't work for me. It did work for me over like. Just I felt like overall it wasn't quite as laugh out loud funny as the first two. But that being said, there was a lot of like really like the whole sequence on the bioplanet facility thing. Nathan.
Oh, that was great.
Nathan Fillion was and his like little is like,
so
I hate
funny.
this guy. Like, why did you say that then? Well, I didn't hear what you said. And just like that running weird
that,
running
that running joke worked so well for me. I was laughing and just like their weird bodysuits.
Yeah, the weird
like that could have easily backfired and been like, whoa, this is really bad. But it worked so well for me. I was laughing like just him in that weird bodysuit and just everyone running around like, or
like when Mantis and Drax go up and she's like, you're in love with him, and like the way Drax reacts like, oh, this has happened like this happens all the time, like just like that dynamic. And was it that scene where there's the guy who looks like the carrot or whatever you're saying?
Oh yeah.
So I mean, I don't want to say the film was not funny, because it was definitely funny. It was great. It was great moments and stuff.
But I think that's all. Like, I think maybe for me it was like there was just less jokes just per minute, like JPMs. But I think that also made me appreciate the humor. They did have more. So it's because I think like I was saying before, like just kind of. I keep using the word maturity, but it's, in this context, maybe not quite the right word. Where instead of like, oh yeah, we're just gonna like every opportunity slip in a fart joke or this epic serious moment, it's gonna give you a record scratch and undermine and make it a joke. I think they by kind of cutting those parts out, we we could appreciate the humor more instead of just like,
Yeah.
oh, this is just a silly, goofy,
Yeah.
stupid, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally see what you're saying. One thing that just kind of I thought of when you were talking about like the suits, just also the suits they're all in, which are all the very bright, primary color kind of suits, which is cool. But it also just reminded me another big point I want to talk is just like the look of this film and how it looks beautiful. And I don't mean like it looks beautiful and like it looks so realistic. I just mean the aesthetic. And this is something we've talked about in the last couple MCU and just superhero action film discussions at large, is one of the criticisms I kind of felt about Ant-Man Quantumania and like Shazam and I don't know, whatever, is that they came across as very generic. There wasn't, to me, a very strong, like, beautiful aesthetic. But with this, it's like, oh, yes, this is what I've been missing. This is what I want. There's a unified, just great look to everything. It looks original. It looks they all look of a piece, like they belong in the same movie. There's obviously bits that are CGI, but it's not like it's not quote unquote bad CGI. I don't know. Like I was just very impressed with how this film looked.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like I love going back to the Ergo Corp thingamajig. That whole set looks so like. I just remember looking at all the backgrounds. There's all kinds of like weird. I can't even tell you like organs. I don't know. There's like this. There's like some orange juice fountain or something going on in the background. But I can just think about that location and I can immediately visualize it in clear detail because it has. They go to just a couple different rooms in that facility, but every facility feels like this. It feels
sense of space to it, and
a sense of space, and it builds in like the world building and the idea that this place was grown, and it feels like it was grown, and that makes sense for our villain who is all into like genetic engineering stuff, right? It all plays together really, really well. And then like the bad guy's ship. Well, that's fine. The bad guy's ship and the Counter Earth all feel.
I mean, I think even Nowhere. Not that we hadn't seen it before, but I definitely think this version of Nowhere had a great style and look to it. And then you have all these very lived in set locations, but then And I think this kind of goes to what you were saying earlier, Ryan, about the maturity of James Gunn himself as a filmmaker. You can then pull back and have these just bombastic, boisterous, giant head planet ramming into giant square spaceship as an action set piece that is both funny and ridiculous, but climactic and heavy and just like cathartic, I think he's able to kind of manage pull all these strings at the right, whatever, tensile strength so that they all kind of interlocked in the moments when we want them to.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like that, when those two ships come to head, I'm like, oh my God, this is insane. And, and like it fires the thing out of his eye or whatever. I was like, oh my gosh, this is insane. And like, it feels like those are the kind of the moments where like, oh, we've known about this thing since the beginning, and now we kind of get to own it. Yeah, if that makes sense. Like,
yeah, totally.
So yeah, I enjoy that.
Trying to think. Those are, I think we touched on most of the stuff I wanted to talk about. You guys kind of said what's your least favorite. It's thinking about it more. I don't know. I wanted to rewatch the first two before watching this one, but I didn't. So I want to rewatch them again. But I think currently I rank these in reverse order. But I love them all. I think this is my favorite. The second one I actually did like a lot. And the first one I obviously love. So I don't know. But I would rank them 3, 2, 1. Yeah, I need to rewatch them too. Yeah. Right now I think
I'm 3, 1, 2.
Mm-hmm. And I am 2, 1, 3.
Nice. Okay.
But I'd say I put 2 just a little bit above 1, not like miles above.
Yeah, me neither. Honestly, I don't put any of these miles above any of them. To me, they're all very, very close in my mind. I said at the beginning, but I think this is just the singular best franchise individually in the MCU. And maybe I'm missing something out there. I'm trying to think. Like, if you're a huge Iron Man fan, maybe, but you know what I mean? Like, it's clear there's kind of a little bit of a dud in each of the other heroes or, whatever franchises. Yeah. The other thing, too, is this franchise or this volume 1, 2, and 3, I think you could watch they do a better job of being contained, as in, if you didn't watch any other MCU film and you only watched 1, 2, and 3 of Guardians, I think you would be able to follow it and have overall a more complete experience than if you were to watch, Captain America 1, 2, and 3, right? I think there would be a lot more missing from that watch.
I would recommend throwing the holiday special in there. I think
it doesn't add a ton, but it's worth it.
Yeah. No, I disagree. I think if it weren't for the bit with Mantis, I think the emotional beat is mainly covered in the holiday special, where it's given the weight that it deserves. Yeah. And I think in this movie they treat it like, well, just in case you didn't see the holiday special, by the way, she's his sister. Yeah, yeah. And I could see, if you haven't seen it, being like, wait, what? Slow down? What? Yeah. And then it's just, and then she doesn't have as much to do. So, I think that if you're talking about a series, that one needs to be included. I think it's more important than I think people give it credit for.
Yeah, and you throw it in there. It's only, 45 minutes or something anyway. So. Yeah. Cool. Well, any other thoughts on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3?
No.
Have we fully expressed our Grootness? Groot also finally said something else. He also has grown as a character. He could say other words.
Well, he said we in the first one.
That's true.
We are.
We are, but then he died. So the current Groot.
Oh, right.
I guess he didn't die. I was thinking about it too, because in this he gets pretty messed up and like his head is running around pretty much. And I was like, oh, I guess he never died. Well, obviously he never died because he's kind of the same character, but he grew up.
I don't know. Yeah.
Groot's weird to think about.
Well, yeah, because when he's adolescent, right? He has the behaviors of an adolescent. That's what I mean. So yeah, right? he grew up. I think he restarts his life cycle.
I guess so. Yeah.
Well, final thoughts. I still remain mixed on this. I obviously like this movie a lot, and I think that it and I do think it's the weakest because it doesn't quite all gel for me, and I wanted to. I didn't feel that like, yeah, that's what it is when it was over, and I didn't feel it on second view, but I still think it's one of the better ones in the overall huge multi Marvel thing. So, yeah. Oh, what do you guys? Final thought.
Yeah, I mean, I sounds like I probably liked it a little more than either of you, but I loved it. I don't know. Favorite movie of the year so far? If not, it's up there. It's in the top 3 for sure. I think also easily one of my favorite of the Marvel films from the last years or two. I was very happy with everything. It was funny. All the characters I really love. And a little bit more mature and dark, but in ways that I think were earned and added to kind of the world, the story, and the characters specifically. Also, just like the idea that when it shows the High Evolutionary with his mask off at the end, and he's just like this grotesque bleeding thing, which is nasty, but then you're like, oh, Rocket did that to him. I don't know, there's layers and complexity and just like going on there. So, anyways.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's, I like it quite a bit. Highly recommend that all people should see it. I think it actually did pretty well and is doing pretty well.
Yeah,
so.
I think, yeah.
Which is good to hear. I'm glad, because it's one of those things where, like, yeah, as we were saying, I think the Marvel films have not been quite up to their usual muster last few years. And I think, like I said, this is a return to form in that regard. So, yeah, I'm happy to see that it's still possible. Granted, I guess Marvel's losing James Gunn to the competitor, their competitor. But so that'll be a fun thing to explore in the coming years.
I think we're in for a rough few years for Marvel, given the writer's strike and the Jonathan Majors situation. I
I weirdly think that they might even thank God for the writer's strike. We could figure this out maybe or something.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I think we're oof. Anyway,
I mean, they have they can easily, write themselves out of it. They have all these multiverse magical whatevers. They can recast him and give some sort of multiversal answer, and I don't know how much of it, how much will be lost.
I don't know what they're gonna do.
Guess we'll see.
he's already
they have also already pulled back on the sheer amount of content over the last, especially the TV. Which in general, I think I've liked their TV over the last couple of years more than their films by and large. But Kevin Feige in the last year, we're cutting back a little bit. We're not going to be drowning you with content.
Which is a smart
move.
I
generally feel that's probably wise.
Yeah, I definitely feel Star Wars burnout, and I'm approaching Marvel burnout. I'm not there yet, but I definitely feel like I'm on the way. So I need them to pump the brakes.
Well, what is the next thing? Is a TV? It's like Secret Invasion, right?
Is that before the Marvels?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's this summer, as in a month maybe from now. It's pretty soon, I think. And then Marvels, I think, is in fall, I believe.
Right.
Yeah. And, granted, the Spider-Man movie doesn't quite fall into MCU canon.
Yeah.
But it's still Marvel.
Yeah.
Just, you know what I mean? I think it still contributes to whatever fatigue,
Secret Invasion is in 2 weeks, actually.
All right, then. Neo.
Yeah.
And the Marvels comes out in November. All right.
Okay. Yeah, we got some time for that. Anyways, cool. Well, the post-credit scenes were also interesting in that they did not hint at any larger, leading us into something else, right? Especially from Guardians 2, which had 5 post-credit scenes.
Yeah.
These were pretty, contained and,
Yeah, I think I really appreciated the scope was concise.
Yeah. Yeah. Alrighty, all right. Well, listeners, what did you think of Guardians Volume 3 a month late? Maybe releasing episodes a month after the movie they come out is good, because this gives a chance for people to see what we're talking about.
It also gives us a chance to forget the movie.
Yeah, it gives us a chance to forget and then have to, either make stuff up or really remember. But what did you think, listeners? Let us know. Write in. Tell us what you thought of. Tell us who or what your take on Creep at the beginning of this movie is.
Oh yeah, I would love to know. Yeah,
we want a poll. We want a running poll. Did Creep work for you at the beginning of Guardians Volume 3? Yes or no? Write in.
YumChunks@gmail.com.
Yes. And
speaking of YumChunks@gmail.com, it's email time.
Yay!
All right, we got a follow up from Kevin Young. Subject line: Garlic Senior. Apparently, that is a in joke that I'm not in on.
Well, it's not. It's
not really an in joke.
It's an out
if you've
joke.
watched Dragon Ball Z.
Oh
Yeah.
well, I'm not. I haven't, so I'm out.
Well, I guess that's.
And
true.
I never
Yes.
will.
Oh,
all right.
Don't close doors.
In response to your response to my email about Mario. Okay, we're reopening this. All right. Oh, before I continue, I have to say I have now seen the Mario movie 4 times. I can explain.
It is streaming.
I can explain. I saw it, and then I took my nephew to see it when we saw it with my sisters. And then I watched it today, and I watched it yesterday, because for today and yesterday were finals days. They're 2-hour periods, and I let my kids choose what fun activity we're going to do, because I don't actually do a final. And they both voted movie, and then they both voted the Mario movie. So I bought it on Amazon. I now own the Mario movie.
So you immediately failed the entire class and they didn't graduate.
Yeah. Yeah. So now, so I've seen it 4 times. My point is I've had plenty of time to think on it and digest and dwell on it. All right. So in response to your response to my email about Mario, You guys sound like you're arguing with me, but I literally agree with everything you said. I think we're all on the same page about all of this. I just wanted to have some more discussion. Wait, hang on. I changed the size of the window. Oops. Okay. I'm as big a Mario fan as anyone. I want a better Mario movie too. I guess the only difference is that I don't have a podcast about it where I'm discussing it at length. You could though. Why we land on different sides of the binary good/bad movie is at the core of what I'm saying about subjectivity in art criticism. The fact that we can agree on just about everything about it and still come away with different overall feelings is, in my opinion, awesome. The spectrum of human emotion is vast and unknowable. Man, I would love a D&D quality Mario movie. If I was a producer on the Mario movie, I would have sent back the screenplay in its current state for revisions or hired new writers entirely. But alas, I'm just a powerless Mario fan, doomed to accept the safe and boring choices made by the people who did produce it. Sean was on the money, that I can give myself over to it enough to enjoy what's there, while also expressing disappointment at what isn't there. Also, Sean, this point about art versus storytelling you made toward the end is very interesting. I had literally just misinterpreted what Chewie said. I was thinking he did mean something with a beginning, middle, and end. I never thought of things like paintings or sculptures as mediums for storytelling, but I love that perspective. And for what it's worth, and only as a means of sparking discussion, I loved Skinamarink. Oh, God. Its lack of coherence is part of what makes it scary to me. The feeling I got from it has stuck with me in a way that a 5-minute short would not have. Being trapped in this confusing and scary world for over an hour is part of why it's effective for me. But don't let that land as an attack or an attempt to discredit opinions that differ. We all bring our own baggage and expectations, and a movie like Skinamarink is a great example of how art is so wildly subjective. A film like that can only be made with the full knowledge that likely more than half of your audience is going to hate it. That doesn't say anything about any of the audience, it just means it is a thing that will land for some and won't land for others. The fact that we culturally have this sort of binary, you just didn't get it sort of attitude about things we like or don't like is what's really the problem to me. That, to me, is really gatekeepy and anti-intellectual. On the subject of Skinamarink, for instance, Chewie, hey, that's me. I have no doubts that you fully understood what it was going for artistically and intellectually, but it just didn't land for you. Kevin, that is correct. And that says nothing about you as a person or as a critic, at least not to me. It just means you're a person with your own ideas and expectations, and that film didn't satisfy them. Totally understandable. I do not think any less of anyone who doesn't like the things I like, and I hate that so many online dummies seem to have this mentality that there's an objective truth to a film's quality and people who disagree with them must be dumb or trolls or whatever. I still see a lot of this sort of thinking in relation to The Last Jedi, for example. Anyway, point is, these discussions are great and important to have because they reveal things about ourselves, our personalities, and our humanity that are so fun to explore. I only take issue when people take disagreements about artistic quality as personal attacks or reflections of their own value as a human being, which, of course, you guys don't do, but it is fairly common in some online discourse. That Reddit thing that you mentioned in your discussion was just the worst. That kind of, there's one right opinion and it's mine, any other opinion only exists out of ignorance sort of idea is such an anti-human, cynical perspective to have, and it sucks that it seems to be held by so many people. I'm glad you guys, curmudgeonly as you are not like that. Anyway, obviously I'm an avid listener, loving the pod, and man, I just love the D&D movie. So fun. Kev Young. Well, Kev, I think that was a very reasonable, if maybe too reasonable response to our previous...
You're giving us too much credit, Kev.
Yeah, dang it, I want to be angry at this. I want you to tell me that I'm wrong. That's what we're always saying. Tell us that we're wrong. No, but yes, you're right. And that is something, at least from my perspective, that's I find one of the many things I find about teaching high school is having these conversations with my students, like at lunchtime, about movies that they've seen, and kind of trying to figure out how emotionally they're reacting, like if they're taking it personally or not, and for example, we just watched the Mario movie in 2 of my classes, and I had kids who had a conversation about it and said, yeah, I didn't really, I wasn't really into it. I had a lot of problems with it. And then we watched it, and one of the kids I had that conversation with who hadn't seen it, she was like, Mr. Chewy, that movie was awesome. How could you hate it? And I was like, I didn't hate it, is the thing. I didn't hate it. There was a lot of things I disliked about it, and there's a lot of things I like about it, and I can enjoy it. And I will tell you, to you guys and to whoever's listening, I did enjoy it significantly more watching it with, a full group of excited high schoolers, and also with my nephew in a theater full of kids, right? So definitely our perspectives, our context, our situations, obviously there's a lot going on there. I mean, I have a whole lesson in my class about how, what type of theater you're in, or the placement of the audience versus the performers, how that affects your experience. And so, yeah, there's all kinds of stuff that you bring to that. Just like Skinamarink. What I brought to that movie is I wanted to see a good movie, and I didn't.
There's those fighting words. There it is.
No,
Starting
but yeah. Anyway, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree, and everything what Kev said. I think sometimes we just assume that people think we assume that people are reasonable and well-intentioned, and people are aware of everything that Kev is saying because it's reasonable and well-intentioned. But then you interact with people and go, "What? I don't understand. Why are you so angry or mad or hate this?" Or, like when you read what Kev says, is like that seems like that should be the default, right? That's how everyone feels, right? But no, it obviously is not how everyone feels. And I think part of it is too, for whatever reason, over the last couple decades or years, we as individuals become so we identify ourselves by a lot of the pop culture that we interact with and partake of. So the movies that you like, and the superheroes or comics, the music, everything, more so than I feel ever. I don't know. I guess I haven't been alive forever, so maybe not. But in my lifetime,
it is very personal.
Right. Well, and I was thinking about this the other day. Like, imagine if you went back in time to whatever, let's say the 60s. And someone saw a good movie, and you're like, oh, did that movie make you happy? You're like, oh, yeah, it was a good movie. But in general, if you ask someone, are you happy with their life in 1960 or wherever, they would probably answer yes or no, and they would base that answer off of a lot of, their living situation, their hunger, how comfortable, their relationships, all that stuff, right? Obviously. But they would not answer that question based off of how good or bad the James Bond films are, or how good or bad, I Love Lucy was that night, or whatever. But I feel if you ask that question nowadays, if you ask someone now, are you happy? A lot of how they would answer would be based on the media they consume, whether they're a DC fan or a Marvel fan. Or if you asked a DC fan, are you happy right now, like just with life? I feel like that answer would change depending on if it was post-Snyder Cut release, pre-Snyder Cut, right? Like, I'm not saying this frivolously. I literally think that people's mental state is so much more tied into these things. So because of that, people are naturally just going to go, yes, it's bad, or because it's themselves. I don't know. Maybe I'm saying stuff is very obvious. Maybe this is,
I think that's maybe potentially an insane take.
You think? I don't think it's just that.
No. I think if I'm to humor this, I think part of it is that I think in the times that we live in, I think that we just culturally rely more on our escapes and our fiction. Yeah. I think our fiction matters a lot more to us right now, and I also think that goes back to something that Kevin, you were saying in this email about what we bring to our movie watching experience. And part of that is we take, and I'm doing massive air quotes here because I'm not trying to sound pretentious, but we take our films seriously. right? Yeah. And some people, they go into the same movie that you are, and you don't know what they were just dealing with. You don't know what horrors exist in their life, and they just want to go and have a fun time. I'm not going to begrudge them for that.
Yeah.
So, and like you said, like, I'm not going to judge them for that. That's fine. I enjoy film by taking it apart.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I enjoy taking the clock apart and dumping all the pieces out onto the table and analyzing every little bit in that. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that either. But I think the best thing that you've said, and I think you said it a few different times, but this idea of binary good/bad movie, I don't think this is just a problem with like film criticism or with media criticism in general. I think it's a problem with culture and society. I think just massive polarization, this inability to exist in the middle and be like, did you like the Mario movie? Not really, but kinda. Yeah, some of it, parts of it, aspects of it. Like I think that there's more and more of the you gotta love it or you gotta hate it. And if you say anything critical at all, that just must mean that you hate it because you didn't love it. Right? I think that concept, that and tribalism, that is just ruining the world.
I think it also gets potentially scary is when discourse informs behavior, by which I mean if we continue as a society to continue to interact with media in this way, in a binary, not just media, but anything, right? We now will potentially start training our brains to think in binary, as in like, if I have a criticism of something, I now hate that thing. We are not allowing ourselves to even exist in between binaries. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, because then there's cultural pressure, there's social pressure, things become norms. Yeah, Kevin, it's a lot. All right.
We need it to be binary. If it's not binary, how else are we going to inform it or feed it into the algorithm so the AI could write all of our and dictate all of our future actions?
I mean, but yeah, I really appreciate all the words that you have to say, and I think if there's one thing to take away, just one thing, it's that Skinamarink is a bad movie.
I need to see this thing. I need to definitively sit down and watch this. I don't know where it's streaming, but...
No, you don't.
No. Well, we'll see.
No, I in all seriousness, no, I think you put a lot of heart and a lot of time into this email. And I think you get it, sir. I think you get it.
Yeah. He's one of the quote-unquote good ones. Not quote-unquote, but...
Well, there are only good ones and bad ones.
That's what I mean. He's one of the good ones.
Right. Yeah. Just one or the other.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well,
cool.
Listeners, you could have a in-depth philosophical conversation with us by proxy if you wanted to. So, YumChunks@gmail.com. Tell us what you thought of Skinamarink. Or the Mario movie.
If you've even seen it. Yeah. Or the Mario movie. All of it. Renfield, D&D. And tell us what you thought of the future things we're going to talk about, which are... What are we going to talk about in the future?
Well, we are definitely going to talk about... is it Across the Spider-Verse? What? Yes, that's the call. What it is? Spider-Verse 2. We're definitely going to talk about it. I guess I need
Spider-Verse 2, part 1 of 2.
Yeah, I guess I should see it. And we might have something else cooking up. Something under the sea, perhaps. Maybe. We'll see.
Maybe.
We'll see.
No place is better. Down where it's wetter.
Ew.
Blame Alan Menken.
I don't blame that man for anything. He is a treasure.
So yeah, we're back. We're not on vacation right now, so we got episodes coming out for the summer for you listeners, and the summer's not letting up because we got we got The Flash coming out, which we'll do an episode on that. We got Indiana Jones coming out. It's a busy 2023.
Yeah, there's no way Indiana Jones is going to be good, so that ought to be a fun episode.
Well, maybe it's not about good and bad. Maybe there's some things that are, cool about it. No, it's just going to be bad.
Well, let's not say that it's not about good and bad, because maybe sometimes it is. See? Non-binary.
Well, see, even our understanding of binary is, shouldn't be binary.
Exactly. Thank you. Yes. We have said nothing.
Nothing is anything. Nothing means anything anymore.
And everything is everything. Yes. And I'm tired and I haven't had dinner yet. So,
oh my gosh.
Let's ride this off into the sunset, like how Guardians 3 didn't.
Yeah. Play that Florence and the Machine song.
Which one? Wait.
As we're dancing. We're all dancing, right?
The dog days?
Dancing 24 versions of himself right now to that Florence and the Machine song.
Oh, that should be a video.
All right, so Ryan, in that game, is it actual video of you, or are you you're a robot avatar? It's not like you.
Yeah. It'll like you create little robot avatars that are clones of your motion.
Okay,
yeah.
That's what I thought. I wasn't sure.
All right.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
This has been
After the
YumChunks,
Credits.
the podcast.
a YumChunks podcast.